We would like to respectfully acknowledge our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Paseño, and Serrano peoples. Today, this meeting place is home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. Welcome. I'm Kim Wilcox. I'm the Chancellor at UCR. It's great to have you here this evening for Future Perfect, a conversation with LeVar Burton. Two great participants this evening. First, Dr. Nalo Hopkinson, a Jamaican-born author of science fiction and fantasy, the author of 7 novels, 3 graphic novels, and more short stories than she or anyone else can probably count. Recipient of the World Fantasy Award, the Andre Norton Nebula Award, the Sunburst Award for Canadian Literature of the Fantastic, and the Damon Knight Memorial Grand Master Life Achievement Award given by the Science Fiction Writers of America. But most importantly, Nalo was a professor in the creative writing department at UCR. And LeVar Burton, actor, director, producer, motion pictures, TV films, TV series. Those from my generation first think of him as Kunta Kinte from Roots. A little younger than me, Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge in Star Trek. And many people may not realize that LeVar Burton actually directed more than 24 Star Trek episodes. Even younger still, how about the host and executive producer of PBS's Rainbow Reading Room for children. Recipient of 13 Emmy Awards, 5 NAACP Awards, a Grammy in 2000 for the autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr., and just this month, the inaugural Penn Faulkner Foundation Literary Champion. Like so many of you, I know you're looking forward to a great evening with LeVar Burton and Nalo Hopkinson talking about stories and the arts in today's very dynamic social climate. Please welcome Mr. Burton and Dr. Hopkinson.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chancellor. How you feel?
Pretty good.
I loved the introduction. I loved the first part of this, acknowledging whose land we occupy in this now moment. That is awesome.
Well, colleagues like Nalo and so many others have helped guide the conscience of the university in better places, I think.
It's a good thing to begin with that, because we live in a world these days that is so conflicted about what the truth is. And so to begin at a place of acknowledged truth and understanding is always a good place to begin for me.
So when you think about tonight, what's your first thought?
Mine?
Yeah.
Well, I see myself as a storyteller at this point in my life, and as an elder. I turned 64 earlier this week.
66 here.
And so you can then relate to this new stage of our lives. Cicely Tyson just passed, and there have been so many mentors of mine who are leaving the planet right now, and it has become increasingly more obvious to me that it is my turn now to step into that role and turn around to the generation to come and offer the value of whatever knowledge, information, wisdom that I might possess, because that is the human story. That is what we do. As a storyteller, I'm looking forward to sharing story. Nalo is one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite human beings on the planet. So I'm stoked. I'm all yours.
Okay, Nalo, beat that.
No, I don't think I can. I'm just going to hang in here and do it the best I can. So LeVar, thank you so much for coming to talk with us tonight. I have a message for you. My virtual assistant, Tiffany, lives in Texas. She's an emerging Black science fiction and fantasy author. She's currently huddled in her apartment, 51 degrees inside, with her pets, no electricity, no running water. So I asked her whether she had a question for you. She'd still be able to contact me by text. And she said, no, but I've been a fan since I was a kid. Please tell him hello. And I hope he gets the Jeopardy host gig, though that might be a Twitter rumor. So from Tiffany, hey.
Hey, Tiffany. And I'm with you, girl. I want the gig too.
All right. So congratulations on being named the first Penn Faulkner Literary Champion. What's that feel like?
Every time something like this, they cannot be talking about me. I'm this kid from Sacramento who had a dream. I entered the Catholic seminary for the first part of my life. I decided not to become a priest, to become an actor instead. And then all of this stuff happened. And I hardly feel worthy. Intellectually, I get how they connected those dots, but it still feels like they really should be giving this to somebody else.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because no, it's yours. So going on from that, when I mention your name, particularly in North America, eyes light up and people say almost reverently, reading rainbow. So these next questions are going to center on that.
Okay.
How does it feel to have taught a whole generation to love reading?
My mother was an English teacher. And so I grew up in a house where reading was mandatory. You either read a book in my mother's home or you got hit with one. It was your choice. But you were going to have an encounter with the written word. That was for sure. And so as the son of an English teacher, my mother had a couple of careers. Teaching high school English was her first, and then she became a social worker, got her MSW, and finished out her working life in the service of an aging population in Sacramento, California. So to answer your question, everything that I do in this field is in honor of my mother, Irma Jean Christian. Whenever I get the opportunity to mention my mother's name in public, I do. I am the man that I am because that woman made the sacrifices that she did and steered me and my sisters in a direction that gave us an opportunity to reach our most full potential. That was her commitment. And I could never repay that woman for everything that she poured into me.
Bless the English teachers. My dad was an English teacher too. So can you talk about the genesis and the drive behind Reading Rainbow?
Oh, sure. I did not come up with the idea. I was initially hired as the host. The show was created by an educator turned television producer named Twyla Liggett. And the idea was to create a television experience for emerging readers. The thinking being that the medium is so powerful in terms of its engagement. Is it possible for us to use this engagement factor during the summer months? We were created as a summer show to address what teachers call the summer slide. Simply put, a child who's learning how to read and making that really key decision as to whether they will become a reader for life or not. When they take that 3-month summer vacation, their reading and comprehension skills tend to suffer. So we were there as a stopgap measure for summer television viewing, because in the 80s, that's where our kids were hanging out in this country, in this culture, in front of the tube. And the educational community was kind of skeptical, I'll say, in as much as television was then discussed in academic circles as going to be responsible for the rotting of the minds of America's children. So it was a really counterintuitive idea that they pitched to me. Having just come through the Roots experience and seeing really up close and personal the power of this medium to have impact on people's lives, and certainly where social growth and change is concerned, I thought, I'm in. This makes all the sense in the world to me. Little did I know it would go on as long as it did, some 26 years of production.
So speaking of your acting career and Roots, so Roots is what leads me into this. You said to The Atlantic some time ago, my first day as an actor, and he was 20 years old. Cicely Tyson played my mother, Maya Angelou, my grandmother. So talk about some strong Black women. I saw your tribute on Twitter to Ms. Tyson, whom the world sadly lost very recently. What did you learn from acting alongside those two greats? And what was that even like for a 20-year-old on his first gig?
You know what? I didn't have sense enough to be scared.
That's often best.
I mean, Roots was my first professional audition. And so, and it wasn't like it happened overnight. There was a process to the casting that actually went on for several weeks into months. When the decision was finally made and I had won the role, I was just excited I was being paid, not a lot, but more than I had ever seen before in a paycheck, to do that which I loved. I mean, acting at that point in my life was the pinnacle of my passions. And their response to me was one that encouraged that sort of naivete and ignorance, because their assumption was because I was there, I belonged there. And so I was just a sponge. Everything I know about being a professional actor, I learned from them, from Cicely, from Dr. Maya, from Lou Gossett, all of the OGs that I had grown up watching. They schooled me. And they took me under their wing, and embraced me. And it was as an initial experience, as an initiatory experience, it was sublime.
It's amazing. So for much of your career as an actor, you've been associated with science fiction, film and television through the Star Trek series. And I know that you read a lot of prose science fiction because you feature so much of it on your podcast, LeVar Burton Reads. Does science fiction shape the future?
It does. It absolutely does. I say all the time, there was some kid who grew up watching the original series, and I'm one of them. I mean, I grew up watching TOS, the original series of Star Trek. We could probably get into some of the reasons why in a bit. But I know that there was some kid who grew up after watching those scenes of Captain Kirk reaching into that secret Velcroed place on his hip, because there are no pockets in the future. I know because I've been there. And that kid grew up, became an engineer, maybe a designer of product, and is responsible for a piece of technology that is more prevalent on this planet than a toaster. And that's the flip cell phone, right? Yeah. That which we imagine is what we tend to manifest in this realm. In fact, the imagination is the trigger for manifestation. And so there are, just in Star Trek alone, that there's the Uhuru's ear device, that ubiquitous Bluetooth thing that we all have familiarity with. We had pads on the Enterprise, iPads, right? You think Steve Jobs wasn't a Star Trek fan? I think Apple owes me money, quite frankly. There are people working on ways to bring sight to the sightless that are modeled on Geordi's visor. You get the idea. That which we focus our imaginations upon is what we tend to manifest as human beings. And that link is inextricable. You cannot separate imagination from creation because it's all a part of the same process. You know that.
I do know that. So when it comes to technology, as you've just said, most of us are living in a Star Trek universe. What would Commander Geordi LaForge be inventing if he were here today?
Wow.
And I can't take credit for that question. It's such a great one.
It's a great question. I would hope that Geordi would be involved in the advancement of our travel technology, which is to say, I would hope as an engineer that he would be working on future iterations of warp drive or whatever the next thing might be. Also, I would hope that he would be engaged in teaching, again, passing that information on to the upcoming generation of engineers.
And hopefully have his own command by now. Damn.
Well, I wouldn't be mad at that either. To have his own ship, that's, that's high praise.
So I think I have the wrong page. We have some questions from students who've agreed to join us and chat with you. Is Matt here yet? Somebody either nod or shake a hand. Shake a head. There you go. So this is Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Hello, hi, how are you?
I'm all right, man. How you feel?
I'm doing great.
Good.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Should I ask my question, Nalo?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I didn't come up with it entirely on my own. I am part of a science fiction workshop called Clarion, and like I was talking about you and this opportunity to ask you a question. So I had talked to a lot of my peers and science fiction writers, and we kind of came up with one. It's that so you represent a lot Afrofuturism and retrofuturism, as well as like the Black present. So what does it feel like now, looking back on all of it, to have like a place in how Black people experience their pasts and futures?
Whoa. Wow. That's that's a seriously complex and brilliantly posed question, Matt. I don't think I've ever really thought of my career in those terms necessarily. But there is, I believe, there is a link between Kunta on one end of the spectrum and Jordy on the other. And for me, LeVar, as the Reading Rainbow guy, is right there in the middle. Now, I'll say that part of my belief system is that as an actor, we engage in burning karma through each character that we play, if that makes any sense to you. By taking on and embodying these different characters, we are literally experiencing and burning through lifetimes of karma. And so when I look at my career in those terms, as you've just encouraged me to do, there is this sort of amazing continuum. There's a thread that really kind of blows me away, because none of this is intentional on my part, Matt. You have to understand. I have, my commitment in my life has been to take the step that's in front of me, and with the belief that the next step will reveal itself, and it always does. I think that life, like walking, is a controlled fall. We rarely fall flat on our faces when we're walking, because that survival instinct causes that other leg to kick out there, and we take the next step. That's my philosophy, and by taking the step that's in front of you, it gives us the opportunity to be fully, wholly in that now moment, right? Not planning for what's happening in the future necessarily, or gaming out scenarios to the nth degree. It allows us to be right where we are. And by being right where I am in all of these different moments, it's led to the kind of career that has that kind of scope, I suppose, or magnitude. It's crazy, but it's my life.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. So now we have a question from Leah.
Hello.
Hi, Leah.
Nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
My question is based off of just I don't know, I was just curious about it, I guess. It's not as deep as Matt's. We'll just say the great question, great opener. So what is your ideal creative project, and why? Is it more based on subject matter, medium, audience, or all of the above? And in this creative project, what role would you imagine yourself as having?
That's a tough one for me to answer. As a storyteller, for me, it takes many forms. Whether I'm acting, writing, producing, directing, podcasting, public speaking, these are all forms of storytelling that I'm lucky enough to be able to engage in and be paid for. I'm able to support myself by not just doing one thing. Now, I will say that. Again, it's not a strategy that I divined at all. As a Black actor in America, I can't make my living just doing one thing. I have to cobble my year together. You feel me? So that's why I've developed all of these different ways to be a storyteller, which is what I feel like I was born to do. So it could be any of those things, or alternately all of those things. In my company now at LeVar Burton Entertainment, we develop IP properties that foster empathy, that focus on diversity, and all while I try to maintain my integrity. So as long as I'm developing projects that hit on those goalposts, I'm good.
Thank you, Leah. Next, we have a question from Nick.
Nick,
Hi, LeVar.
what's going on, brother?
So it's an honor to speak to you tonight. Much of the work you have done has been socially conscious, from portraying Kunta Kinte, Ron LaFleur, and MLK, to hosting Reading Rainbow and LeVar Burton Reads. As a former seminarian, how does your spirituality inform your decisions as a performer?
That's a really good question, Nick. I'm an ex-seminarian, and I'm an ex-Catholic. I walked away from organized religion a long time ago. It was part and parcel of recognizing that the priesthood wasn't for me after all. However, my spirituality is an integral part of who I am. It informs my worldview and every breath that I take. It was Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, that really encouraged me and gave me permission, in a sense, to use the medium as a pulpit, as it were. Fred did that incredibly well, impeccably well, better than anyone who's ever been on TV. And he was a Presbyterian minister. I was an ex-seminarian, and that's the field on which we met. When I first met Fred, I was eager to meet him because I really was interested in who the real man was. I was anticipating that, okay, so I'm going to meet the real Fred Rogers. Little did I know Fred Rogers was one of the most authentic human beings I've ever encountered in my life. That was who he was. He was that present. He was that patient. He was that focused on your humanity. And his encouragement to me was, you have this platform, you have this sense of who you are and the kind of message you want to deliver. Don't waste the opportunity. And that's when I really doubled down on investing myself, my personal experiences and my own point of view into the episodes of Reading Rainbow.
Thank you, Nick. Now we're going to hear from Brandy.
Good evening, LeVar.
Hey, what's going on, Brandy?
Not much. I hope you're doing well, staying safe and well.
Thank you.
My question for you tonight is, do you feel that media will or is currently changing as a result of COVID-19? And if so, do you have any advice for those who may want or need to use science fiction as a way of making legible what has been so difficult for so long?
Wow. Where did you get these students? These are brilliant.
You see, our students are the bomb.
Wow. Are these your students, Nalo?
Some of them.
Yeah.
Maybe all of them. I have no memory, but definitely some of them.
Brandy, would you do me a favor and ask that question again? Because my sense is that it's a two-part question, and I'm not sure that the two are, obviously interrelated. Would you mind?
So, do you feel media will or is currently changing as a result of COVID-19?
Okay, let's take that question. Okay.
Yes.
I spent 52 days last year, late last year, from October to Thanksgiving in New Orleans, acting in one television project and directing 2 episodes of another. And so there are many protocols that have become a part of the process that's changing the nature of the process of storytelling itself. And in the case of NCIS NOLA, the show that I was directing, they actually, in their storytelling, embraced COVID-19. And so the actors were, wearing masks in scenes, and we were trying to figure out what was the most natural and appropriate way to remove those masks, because it was difficult to, see who they were and understand what they were saying. So there were real challenges to the storytelling process itself. I don't know that COVID-19 is going to change storytelling writ large necessarily, but I think it's certainly going to influence the written word and how we look at the world going forward. We are having a communal experience that is incredibly rare, especially in the modern world. And I can't help but think it's bound to creep in to our fiction going forward. Because this is an event in humanity that is it's unusual where we find ourselves now. We're at a real perilous time in civilization, in the history of humanity, and daily we are, at least I am, reminded of the tenuous nature of our presence here. There are indicators all over that, shit is shaky. And the second part?
Yes, thank you for that. The second part is, do you have any advice for those who may want to or need to use science fiction as a way of thinking through what has been difficult for so long?
Please do it. Please, 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 pretty please, right? Yeah, like I said, it's bound to creep in. See, speculative fiction for me is it's a what is it I want to say? Speculative fiction and the writing of speculative fiction is a radical act of independence, and because what we're doing is creating the future, right? And we're also giving ourselves an opportunity to interpret the present from a safe distance. I think Star Trek has always been great at that, giving us through the storytelling an opportunity to examine who we are without triggering us in negative ways, right? That's kind of the value of the entertainment aspect of, say, a series like Star Trek or a franchise like Star Trek. But really what we are doing is examining the human journey and creating a vessel, if you will, for, again, that common experience, an agreed upon set of ideas and ideals, right? Infinite diversity and infinite combination. That was a big part of Gene Roddenberry's vision. And it has been embraced by so many souls planetarily across generations that those ideas have now become a part of who we are. I think that's remarkable. It's amazing. It's miraculous.
Thank you, Brandy. Next question is from Christine.
Hello, LeVar.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you.
So my question for you is, well, like as a writer, like most of us, there's a certain moment where we get inspired to like go down this path to become the storyteller, or either someone or something. So I just gotta ask, like, who or what was your inspiration to becoming this influential writer that you are?
Well, I spoke about my mother a little while ago. I just mentioned Fred Rogers. My storytelling mentors are my mom, Irma, Fred Rogers, Gene Roddenberry, and Alex Haley. I consider these people the ones who inspired me to do that which it is I do today. And I learned an awful lot from them, and each one, different stuff. Like Fred's influence on me was about using the medium, staying authentic, being true to who you are, and allowing that to be a part of your message. Gene taught me that all of our heroes are human. Here was this great visionary who was an ex-cop and wanted all the women on the show to have short skirts, right? So our heroes are human. And that's important for us to remember, because the only direction that you can go from a pedestal is to fall off, and it's a downward trajectory. From Alex, I learned the importance of allowing finding your own unique voice and rolling with that. And when I say voice, I don't mean just in writing what it is you say. Alex was a great writer. He was also one of the best orators. He was the best public speaker I ever encountered. And when I read Alex's work, I actually hear his voice in my head. And I have that experience with no other writer that I know. I hear his rhythm, I hear his cadence, I hear his intonation, because that was the essence of who he was. He was like Fred. He was absolutely authentic in everything that he wrote and spoke. And so those are the people that I look up to as storytellers, and consider all of them to have been influential in my life and career.
Thank you, Christine. Now we have Stephanie.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Steph.
Thank you for this wonderful conversation so far. It's been fantastic. My question refers back to what you were talking about earlier about imparting wisdom to the next generation. No pun intended there. What advice do you? My question is, what advice do you have for the next generation of diverse writers, artists, designers, and thinkers who are passionate about building a better world?
Don't take no as an answer. This is an amazing and remarkable time for writers and artists who are interested in telling stories and bringing those stories to a broad audience. This is a real moment of opportunity, I believe, and not taking no for an answer. What that means to me is ignoring all of the traditional beliefs around who controls the process of creativity and creation, right? Up until this point in time, it's been true that the power resided in the hands of small minority of white men. We live, I believe, in the age of the democratization of content creation, which is to say, the barrier to entry for storytellers who want to tell a story has been lowered so much that the price of a device that you already possess is all you need, along with your heart, your soul, your determination. No one can stop you from telling that story, and no one can stop you from taking a shot at getting distribution. And with social media and the internet, you actually have an opportunity to find an audience. So we have democratized storytelling because it's the Wild West, right? And I believe that we're all storytellers. And in our way, we're all telling stories all day, every day. Every time you post something on Instagram, every time you send a tweet, I mean, we're storytelling all the time. It's a natural state for human beings. We walk around sharing our stories with one another constantly. And so to do it consciously, right, is the next level, is the next step. Not just, to get likes or to satisfy one's ego, but to really think about what is it that I want to say today, right? How is it that I want to interact with my world today? Do I feel frivolous, or is there some deeper idea that I want to investigate, explore, share, invite others to participate in along with me? We have a world that is so connected, which is why this period of COVID has been so interesting for all of us. Because in the midst of all of this connectivity, we have been forced into isolation. And that tension is a real fertile ground for creativity. And the conversation that we were just having about how this is going to creep in to our literature and to our storytelling, that tension is, I think, a big part of what the universe has intended for us to experience, so that these things become a part of who we are as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, LeVar, for saying that, because I don't know if you know that UCR is an extraordinarily diverse campus. By far the greater number of the students are students of color. And from whatever background, for a lot of the students, it's the first time anyone in the family has gone to university. And in creative writing, what I hear a lot is, will I be allowed to? Will I be allowed to? And so I spend a lot of time saying, nobody can stop you from doing shit. It might not get out into the world, but there are more ways of stories getting out into the world now. Thank you.
You no longer have to ask for permission. Just freaking do it.
Exactly. I'm going to bring Matt and Brandy up again, because they both have extra questions. So Matt.
Hello again.
You're back.
Looks like I am. Hi. You kind of answered the first part of it. It was kind of a two-parter, asking what led you to be an advocate and conduit for children's stories such as that in Reading Rainbow. Though I feel you've probably answered that for the most part. We've talked a lot about it. If you would like to be more direct with that one, you can, but I kind of want to focus on the second part of it, which is if there was ever a time where you felt that doing children's stories wasn't the right path for you, and what was it about children's literature that kept you there? I know there's oftentimes a stigma where people talk about if it's childish, if it's young adult, now is the one that people talk about a lot, if it's wrong or not as high art as adult literature.
I love your question, Matt. Well, I told you my mother was a teacher. We're all teachers in my family. My elder sister just retired from a 35-year career as an educator. Her two daughters, my nieces, are in education, as is my son and two cousins. So if you're a Burton, you're in the education business. It's what we consider to be our family business. My focus on children came about because of that instinct in me to be an educator and to inherit that mantle. Knowing full well the impact that literature has had on my life, I wanted to pass that on at a point in people's lives where it could be most effective. And helping a child who knows how to read become a reader for life through the medium of television just sort of was presented to me. I didn't know at the beginning how deep that journey would be, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. And so as the step that was in front of me, that's the step that I took. Confirmation has come almost every day of my life for the last 30 years that was the right move, that was the thing to do, right? And I've never really questioned that. I've always, once I embrace a thing, I tend to just go with it until it is revealed that it's time to move on.
Thanks, Matt. And Brandy.
Yes. Hello again.
Hi.
So my final question is, in what ways do you make care important to your work, whether through self-care or care for the communities that you're trying to reach out to?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Self-care is really important to me. Um, Traditionally, I travel a lot. I call myself an itinerant storyteller. I go where the story needs to be told, right? Um, but I've been grounded for a year. Outside of those 52 days that I spent in New Orleans, I've been home. And when I say home, I mean within these walls for the most part. My 88-year-old mother-in-law lives with us, and I can't afford to bring anything home and put her life at risk, right? And so self-care is really important. Um, Physically, mentally, emotionally, I try and take care of myself on all of these levels. Um, in terms of my outreach to the community, I do see what I do as important. Um, we're not curing cancer, but we are adding value to the journey. And I think that's important. I believe that who we are and why we're here, where we're going, all of these things are informed, all the answers are informed by story and storytelling. So even though we're not addressing the physical nature of humanity, we are feeding the soul as artists. And I find that a valuable pastime, a valuable pursuit.
Thank you, Brandy. So now I have a question for you, LeVar. The best works of science fiction and fantasy, I'd say even some of the not so best, challenge existing notions of race, identity, and ability. How can, nope, I got the wrong one.
Mm.
I know the question I was burning to ask you was, within the industry, what barriers still exist for artists of color and those who wish to diversify storytelling, and what can consumers do to help platform those voices?
Another great question. You know, there are still barriers in this country, in this culture. Um, One of the reasons there are a couple of reasons why I do my podcast, LeVar Burton Reads. One, because I love reading aloud. It's one of my favorite modalities of storytelling, reading aloud. I was in the third grade when Mrs. Twig, my third grade teacher, she would go to make a cup of tea for herself on afternoons after lunch. And she would put me in front of the class with a book because I was the best reader in the third grade. But Mrs. Smith was Mrs. Twig was the first person in my life outside of someone in my family who recognized that I had a talent, right? And acknowledged me for that. And so in doing that, you know, she helped me find myself, even at that really, really young age. So there are barriers that exist in this society still that we need to address and overcome. And artistic endeavor has always sort of led the way because, I mean, in my lifetime, I look at people like Harry Belafonte, Ossie Davis, Ruby Dee. These were performers who were at the top of their game and fully in the public eye, and they were all in the civil rights movement. They were all in the streets, on the front lines, fighting for civil rights. And so I grew up with the idea that being an artist means carrying that flag, right? And I believe, you know, very firmly in that as a part of my value system. So it's clear that we have a lot of work to do, but being active and in the struggle. I get people telling me all the time on Twitter, why don't you just shut the hell up and go back to acting? And I don't respond as much as I would like to, because it really, it never serves to engage the trolls. But there are people who really believe that I should just shut up and because they don't feel like I have a right to speak my mind or my heart simply because I'm on a show that they like. So this is part of the decision that we all have to make. Whether you're a writer or a singer, an actor, a filmmaker, how how is what you have to say going to impact those around you, the world around you? I don't think any of us necessarily want to create in a vacuum, right? And none of us want to create in obscurity necessarily. Part of our impulse in doing this is to want to do it and share it with other people, right? Share the value of the intrinsic nature of the work, the beauty, the the mystery, the majesty, all of that, and I think it's important for every one of us to answer that question: who's my audience, and how do I want my work to impact that audience?
Definitely. I have a couple of, one's a question, one's a comment from the audience. And Petra says, hi, Mr. Burton. How has sci-fi helped society reduce or address inequality and racism?
Well, like I said before, Gene's vision has seeped into the culture. It's become a part of the culture. It's become, Star Trek is, I think it's the longest lived entertainment franchise, aside from maybe Bond. Maybe Bond is older. I don't know.
Let's say Star Trek.
Well, at least I think Star Trek has brought more to the culture than Bond, right? Because given an opportunity, I would much rather do more than simply entertain. And Star Trek is a real example of that, as was Roots. I mean, I like to believe that there is also this thread through my work at all, that it is more than simply entertainment, that it brings other opportunities as well to educate, to inform, if everything is working right, to enlighten, to lift ourselves up, right, and light the way for one another through storytelling. That's my deal. That's why I get up in the morning. And science fiction has, just by virtue of being a fan of it, and wanting to engage on that level, has become a real important part of my voice. And going back to the podcast, one of the reasons I do it is to shine light on marginalized writers, because they don't get the shine. But I have this opportunity, I have this platform, so I want to share, just like I did, for a lot of you when you were kids with Reading Rainbow. I'm still engaged with you around a relationship that is about literature, and I'm still recommending, authors and stories that I think you might benefit from.
And the last comment is from Josh. He says, hi, Mr. Burton. I'm the director of the UCR Jazz Ensemble. I just want to express my admiration and gratitude for your work, especially as a child growing up in the 80s with Reading Rainbow. My 6-year-old son and I watch reruns all the time on YouTube. I'm also grateful for this opportunity to listen to you speak with such humility, perspective, and reflection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
thank everyone for participating on this note. We're getting close.
Oh my goodness.
We're getting close. Wow. I have to hand this back to Chancellor Kim Wilcox.
Thanks, Nalo. This is like any good class, LeVar. When it comes before you think it should, the end comes before you think it should, it went well. Just great. I've been doing lots of thinking here. One, I can't wait to introduce you again, so I can make the point of saying 13 Emmys, 5 NAACP awards, a Grammy, Penn Faulkner, and best reader in his 3rd grade class. Because and I appreciate your sharing that, because the Penn Faulkner Award, sorry, but it came late in your life. It's not going to have that big an impact. There's just not that much left. But you got a lot in front of you.
Oh, digging yourself in deeper.
That's awesome. That is awesome, Kim.
But thanks, and I appreciate the last comment that Nalo just read about humility. That really is what has defined the evening: insight and experience and motivation, but humility, which makes all the rest so much better. And in some sense, that's one of the best ways to tell a story, is with humility. And tonight was in some ways a woven set of stories about you and about art and about today in America. So Thank you so much.
I thank you and everybody who joined in for your time, your energy, and your attention. It means a lot. I'll see you all next time, but you don't have to take my word for it.
Well, we look forward to it. And for everybody who's watching over my shoulder here, this is the first of a big weekend of celebrations of the end of our campaign. And there's the schedule. And if you don't have time to run through all those dates and write them down right now, down at the bottom, celebrate.ucr.edu. Celebrate.ucr.edu. Celebrate. I'm going back in the bars. Dance to the music. But so those are the times of the rest of the events, and this was a great kickoff. So thanks to everybody, and thanks for being here.
And special thanks to Nalo. Thank you, darling. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Good evening.